Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a subject that, even now, nearly 25 years later, is still incredibly painful.
We're talking about 9/11.
Exactly. And our deep dive today is focused on source materials from people who argue that the official story, the 9/11 Commission report, just doesn't cover everything.
Right. Our goal here is to analyze these claims, these sources that suggest a real systemic government failure. We're not just talking about mistakes, but things like intentionally withholding information.
Disable defense protocols, even.
And a cover-up. The central idea we're tracking in these materials is that there has been a sustained, high-level cover-up that has kept us from understanding what really happened.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, before the attacks. With the intelligence failures. There's a really difficult theory that comes up again and again in these sources. It's the idea that maybe some people in the intelligence community sort of stood down.
Or grease the wheels, as some put it. The theory is that they let the plot develop, maybe hoping to catch a bigger fish, like the al-Qaeda leadership itself.
And the most glaring example of this, at least according to the sources, is the Al-Hada House switchboard in Yemen.
Yes. This was, for all intents and purposes, bin Laden's office phone. U.S. intelligence, specifically the CIA, knew al-Qaeda was using this hub for planning.
And they knew this for years, right? Not just months before.
Years. They knew about it as early as 1996. It was 100% confirmed as a key hub after the 1998 embassy bombings.
And then came the USS Cole bombing in 2000. 17 American sailors were killed.
And the intelligence for that attack also flowed through that same switchboard. Yet the operational decision was made to keep the line open, to keep listening.
The argument being that shutting it down would have, at the very least, made the 9/11 plot much, much harder to pull off.
It would have delayed it, absolutely. Yeah. So the choice to keep listening instead of acting is seen in these sources as a failure that directly led to the loss of 3,000 lives.
But it goes deeper than just listening in. There's this firewall between the CIA and the FBI.
This is critical. The CIA knew about two specific identified al-Qaeda operatives who were coming to the United States in early 2000.
Khalid Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi.
Those are the two. Now, the CIA's job is foreign intelligence. The FBI handles things domestically. But the sources claim the CIA deliberately kept the FBI in the dark.
They didn't tell them that known terrorists were entering the country.
Not a word. So these two men, Mihdhar and Hazmi, they lived here for 18 months.
18 months.
They connected with the other hijackers. They took flying lessons. And these are the two men who allegedly flew the plane into the Pentagon.
So you have to ask the question, why? Was it just a turf war between agencies?
Or, as the sources suggest, was the information withheld to protect some kind of ongoing operation? Maybe that let the line out strategy to try and recruit them or see who they'd lead them to.
Whatever the reason, it's just a catastrophic failure. It allowed the hijackers to plan everything right here on U.S. soil, completely undisturbed.
Which brings us to the day of the attacks itself. Because even after the first plane hit, the failures just kept coming.
The second tower. World Trade Center 2.
It's just devastating. After the first tower was hit, you'd think the first order of business would be to get everyone out of the second tower.
But that's not what happened.
No. People in WTC2 were told by the Port Authority and by their own companies to stay put, stay at your desks, return to your offices.
And the sources point out that an elevator ride from the top floors to the ground took about a minute. They had 17 minutes between the first and second impacts.
17 minutes. Everyone below the impact zone could have gotten out. That single decision cost hundreds and hundreds of lives.
And then there's the air defense question, NORAD.
The big one. I mean, this is their entire job. Standard operating procedure says you get fighter jets in the air within 5 to 10 minutes of a suspected hijacking.
5 to 10 minutes. So what happened on 9/11?
Well, Flight 11 was confirmed hijacked at 8:14 in the morning. The jets didn't really scramble in any meaningful way until after the Pentagon was hit, at 9:38.
Wait, an hour and 20 minutes later.
An hour and 20 minutes. And what's stranger, the jets they did scramble were sent from bases that were farther away. They called them from Otis Air Force Base in Massachusetts, not McGuire in New Jersey, which is right there.
It makes no sense. The one day in history, you need your air defense system to work perfectly, and it seems like it was completely disabled.
And that leads right into all the weirdness around the Pentagon attack and Flight 77.
The pilot, for one, Hani Hanjour.
Oh,
the sources we looked at say he was a terrible pilot.
Terrible. His instructors said he could barely handle a little Cessna, and yet the official story is that he performed this unbelievable maneuver.
The 270-degree corkscrew dive.
At high speed to hit the first floor of the Pentagon. Experts say it's a maneuver even seasoned pilots would struggle with. So that's a huge discrepancy right there.
And then the radar goes out.
Yes. There was this radar anomaly. The track for Flight 77 just vanishes somewhere over the Ohio-Kentucky border. And we're talking primary radar, not just the transponder.
And didn't the emergency pinger go off out there?
That's what some reports indicated, the ELT, the emergency locator transmitter. It supposedly went off in that remote area, which would signal a crash happened there, not in D.C.
And then at the Pentagon itself, reporters on the scene, they were confused.
They were, because they didn't see what you'd expect to see at a plane crash. Where was the main fuselage? The wings? The huge heavy jet engines? The scene just didn't look right.
And we can't talk about anomalies without mentioning World Trade Center 7.
WTC-7, the third tower. A 47-story skyscraper that wasn't hit by a plane but collapsed later that day almost perfectly into its own footprint.
The official story is fire damage.
Uncontrolled fires, yes. But it fell at near freefall speed, which, has raised a lot of questions in the engineering community.
And some of the source material goes even further. I mean, these are very extreme claims, but they're out there.
They are. Some sources demand that you ask special ops personnel about allegations of, and this is a direct quote, bombs planted in the couches of that building.
Which is a sensational claim, but the point is, the collapse of WTC-7 is a structural anomaly that many feel was never properly investigated.
And this all funnels into the next part of our deep dive, which is the alleged cover-up, the institutional blockade.
The sources basically argue there's this systemic block because the truth is just too exceedingly uncomfortable.
It would mean admitting that the U.S. government, that the intelligence community has blood on its hands.
And this is where we get the story of Sandy Berger, the former national security advisor for Clinton.
It's an extraordinary story. He was caught stealing documents from the National Archives.
What were these documents?
They were 7 sets of the Millennium After Action Report, or MAAR. It was a critical review of counterterrorism failures, and it specifically detailed the entry of those 2 hijackers we talked about, Midar and Hazmi.
So he stole the very report that detailed the failures leading up to 9/11.
And destroyed them. The theory in the source material is that he was protecting that let the line out operation. And the fact that the Bush administration didn't really go after him hard suggested to some that the cover-up was bipartisan. It protected both sides.
So this institutional secrecy continues today.
Absolutely. The sources are demanding the release of key documents that are still classified.
Like what?
First, Richard Clark's look-back reports. That's 18 months of files from before 9/11. Second, the full, raw NSA files on that Al-Hada switchboard.
But to see exactly what they knew and when they knew it.
Precisely. And third, of course, the infamous 28 pages from the congressional inquiry.
The pages that supposedly detail Saudi Arabia's role.
Right. But it wasn't just foreign governments. There was also foreknowledge of stock trades. People shorting American and United Airlines stock.
Betting that the stock would crash.
And the banks and the WTC as well. This was undeniable proof that someone with money knew the attacks were coming. The government knows who made those trades.
But they've never released the names.
Never. It's a concrete link between high finance and mass murder that is just covered in secrecy.
And this brings us to the final part of this, and honestly, it might be the most shocking. How the system failed the victims' families, even after the attacks.
It's a story of exploitation. It starts just 9 days after 9/11. Congress passes a law.
And this law retroactively caps the liability for the airlines, for New York City, for Boeing.
Basically, it made it impossible for the families to sue. They were denied their day in court. They were forced into the Victims' Compensation Fund.
The VCF, which was no fault. So, no trial, no discovery.
No ability to subpoena the documents that would have shown what really happened. It was the first systemic failure of justice for the families.
So with their main legal path blocked, some families found another way. They got default judgments against Iran.
Right. Based on claims Iran helped some hijackers. This allowed them to get money from a separate fund run by the Department of Justice, one funded by terrorist sanctions.
This is where it gets really complicated and, frankly, ugly.
This is where the alleged hedge fund scam starts. Lawyers for some victim groups started encouraging their clients to sell their judgments to offshore hedge funds.
Why would they do that?
The families got some cash up front, which they desperately needed, but the hedge funds, often in the Cayman Islands, bought the legal right to the full future payout at a huge discount.
And there was a loophole in the law that set up this fund.
A catastrophic loophole. The legislation, written by figures like Senator Menendez, included the phrase successors in interest thereof,
Mean.
meaning the hedge funds that bought the claims legally became the successors to the victims. The law prioritized paying these third-party investors.
So the fund meant to compensate victims was instead set up to guarantee profits for offshore hedge funds.
That's the allegation, and the result is staggering. The 9/11 civilian widows, who were the largest group of victims, received pennies on the dollar compared to other groups, somewhere between 6 and 66 times less.
They were penalized because there were so many of them.
Yes. Paying them what they were owed would have drained the fund and cut into the profits for the hedge funds and the lawyers. The sources estimate the lawyers alone made about $2 billion from the system.
The very system that failed to protect their families, then exploited their compensation. It's unbelievable.
So when you put it all together, it's a picture of total institutional failure.
From top to bottom, intelligence warnings ignored, defense protocols that just stopped working on the day.
And a cover-up that follows, one that protects institutions and then even extends to exploiting the victim compensation funds.
So where do we go from here? What's the solution?
The sources are clear on this. The only way forward is a new, truly powerful investigation. We're talking a truth commission with a special prosecutor, a grand jury.
And you'd have to offer immunity.
Immunity and anonymity. It's the only way you'll get people from inside the system to finally come forward and tell the truth.
So as we close this out, the final thought for you, the listener, has to be this. If the cover-up has been this massive and has lasted for a quarter of a century, you have to ask yourself.
It's not just about how the attacks happened anymore.
No. The real question is, what fundamental awful truth about the relationship between a government and its own people is so important that it requires this much secrecy for this long? That's the question that needs an answer.